Actually, that brings me to that point where I remember vividly when now the foreign direct investments were coming from South Africa then, and we experienced a lot of investments coming from South Africa. And, for Tanzanians, when you talk about South Africa, we only knew apartheid from South Africa. Yes. Although you guys were on the forefront of transitioning that, but people were still viewing South Africa as a bad place because it was always about apartheid. Yeah. So when people saw that now investments are coming from South Africa, they had a view that these South Africans are going now to overpower us. Yeah. They are taking over everything. They are taking over business opportunities. Yeah. And so they were trying to press President Mkapa to slow down on inviting South Africans from taking over. And I remember vividly President Mkapa responding to this, that he wished he had more. Yeah. While people were telling him to slow down, and he said, I wish he had more. Yeah. So, and you are probably one of those people who are orchestrating all these investments from South Africa. What was it about it? How do you feel about that situation?
As well as condemned for doing that, for bringing South.
You were condemned.
Yeah, that
because you were in the forefront.
I was in the forefront, and in some quarters people were complaining that the South Africans, especially the white South Africans, and derogatively referring to the Boers that are going to swallow this economy. Those sentiments were indeed there, and you can understand, partly because this country was highly and intensively mobilized against apartheid system. Yes. And to the point, there was a confusion between the apartheid system
and the government,
and the business community. You can understand, it was part. The business community of South Africa was also part of that system. So those sentiments could be understood. But also, as leaders in government and at my level as an ambassador, you should also balance those ideological or historical views and the reality.
At that moment.
Yeah, that moment.
Yes.
It's a fact that for the economic transformation measures that were being undertaken in Tanzania, you needed FDI. Foreign direct investment.
Yes.
And for as long as you need the FDI, foreign direct investment, it doesn't matter whether it comes from Japan or United States or South Africa. And for us, indeed, as members of SADC and South Africa being reintegrated in the African family, I think there was no contradiction. So indeed, there were those complaints, but here we are at the leadership level. Yes. Yeah, you have to balance what is of material concern and what is the reality. I think it was clear that South Africa is being integrated back into the family, African family. So it didn't matter whether the investors came from South Africa or Japan. You mentioned, yes, indeed, President Mkapa in defense said, well, he needed more. I recall having a conversation with the biggest anti-apartheid fighter in Tanzania, who was Julius Nyerere. One of the visits in South Africa, said, but he was encouraging me to mobilize more investors from South Africa.
Nyerere himself.
Yeah, and this is the biggest anti-apartheid fighter.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, and one day I was telling him that people are complaining, you're blessed, people are worried about being swallowed by South Africans. Whom do they want to swallow them?
Yes.
Would the Greeks or Japanese swallow them better? So he became one of my greatest supporters, to mobilize more investors.
I think people were a bit afraid because they lacked that knowledge that you had, that South Africa had already changed. It was no longer an apartheid South Africa. It was now a democratic South Africa. But people still had that knowledge and feeling that it was still an apartheid South Africa.
Even the people like Mandela himself who suffered, spending 27 years in jail. He had changed. He had changed. He was dealing with them, interacting with them. They were part of this. They are South Africans.
South Africans. They are Africans.
That's why I think at one stage Mwalimu said those who are expressing those sentiments are the Kabulus themselves, because they're behaving in a Kabulu way to discriminate to white South Africans.
Yeah, so Mwalimu now was against discrimination.
Yeah.
So he thought now even some Tanzanians are becoming Kabulus as well, because they are discriminating Africans who are at that moment white. So
reverse racism.